Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jerry Freewalt. I'm with the Office for Social Concerns for the Catholic Diocese of Columbus, and it's so good to see you here this morning. Well, His Eminence, Cardinal Peter Turkson, is President of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, which has as its mandate to promote justice and peace in the world in light of the gospel and of both the papal and episcopal teachings of the Church. The Council, first and foremost, is at the service of the Holy Father, and also collaborates with other departments of the Roman Curia. He is an appointed member of several institutions of the Curia, congregations for the doctrine of the faith, divine worship, evangelization, Catholic education, pontifical councils for Christian unity, and Cor Unum, just to name a few. Cardinal Turkson is from the western region of Ghana, Africa, and was ordained a priest and later installed as Archbishop of Cape Coast. Saint Pope John Paul II named him to the Sacred College of Cardinals in 2003. He has such an impressive educational background and leadership responsibilities in Ghana and the Vatican. It would take the rest of the conference to talk about all of them. But there is one role which he played, which is joining us with him today, and that is as a lead consultant to Pope Francis in the development of the encyclical letter Laudato Si on care for the common home. And in that role, Cardinal Turkson also took the lead in the press conference upon its release, and he's speaking everywhere about it on the planet, almost to every person on the planet, probably he's thinking to this point. Really important, talking about this important message of the Holy Family. So, Cardinal Turkson, welcome to Ohio, which is not only the home to people in this room, but in a sense for you, a part of our common home. It is my honor to introduce you, His Eminence, Cardinal Turkson.
A very good morning to all of you. And glad to see all of you and want to thank you heartily for having responded to the invitation of the two planners and to be here this morning. As you heard, Jerry say, I started off in Ghana, and as you know, Ghana used to be a British colony, so we picked up a little bit of British English. Then ended up in Albany, New York, for theology, and that got mixed with a little bit of New York, upstate New York English, and then went to Rome in Italy, and it became Italian. And then got mixed up with German. So I don't know what kind of English I speak anymore. Nevertheless, I'll try to speak slowly enough as to be able to make sense. And he said he had a lot of things to say. He was going to speak very fast. I have so little to say, so I speak very slowly. And I hope that... but I leave a lot of things also to the question and answer session that would also follow. It is true, having worked with Pope Francis on this, each time that I pick up the Encyclical again, this is the way it comes up in Rome, in Italy, from the Vatican Press. Anytime you pick it up, you get a new sense, and you have it's almost like when in New York on the 29th of June, I had to talk about this at a high panel, and I said it's like the scriptures. And yes, people take the scripture and do exegesis. You can take this and do exegesis with it and establish new, keys for reading it and all of that. So this one I'll just share briefly with you some my brief ideas and thoughts about this, and try to relate it with a very crucial industry in this part of the United States, agriculture and farming and food production. So that's what I'll try to do with you this morning. It is true, as has been said, that our dicastery was involved in this, and it's because every now and then, the heads of the different dicasteries working with the Holy Father seek audience to go talk about their, programs of action and activities. And so, in the March of 2014, I had one of such sessions with Pope Francis. At the end of which he said, I'm thinking of writing an encyclical on ecology, but natural and also human. What do you think about it? I said, well, that would be a great idea. Okay, cool. So we'll think about it. And then come Palm Sunday, Mass in St. Peter's, and this was in the square. So after Mass, as you've seen the Pope do several times, he takes off his chasuble and everything, begins to greet the cardinals, and then gets into the jeep and then, drives through the crowd. So on greeting the cardinals, he came to me and says, traditionally, when I went to tell the staff in my office that the Holy Father was thinking of developing an encyclical, they have a traditional way that they go about this. In the past, when the Pope wants to write an encyclical, he would convene, he would invite, the group that he thinks would have to provide the basic draft and do a short meeting with them to probably, tell them what the main outlines or the main interests, would be. And so that's what I was told that, that's the method. And so Francis would probably fix a date when we can meet. So at this Palm Sunday celebration, I said, Holy Father, when can we get together to? He says, no, you begin to write. And everybody saw that on camera. So after the Mass, everybody was asking me, what was the Pope asking you to write? but that's how it began. So seeing that Francis was not going to go the traditional way, we decided to just proceed. And knowing that this was supposed to be a document, a message for everybody, for the whole world, we put together a team. One from the United States, from the Catholic University of Washington, one from Ireland, one from Germany, one from Southern Italy. And then, so with this small team, we started working on a draft. And thinking that the Pope wanted to publish this encyclical very soon, we rushed to get a draft ready. And so knowing that normally July and August, these are, his vacation months, we thought that if he had it ready by the beginning of July, he would use his vacation period to kind of edit it so that at the end of his vacation, would have an encyclical ready. It didn't work exactly that way or either. So we rushed. We rushed. I think if we'd taken our time, would have come up with a better draft. But in any case, we rushed, and the first week of July, we had a draft ready for him, which we submitted. And then he said, no, but I want it also on a pen drive. So we put it on a pen drive and, presented it to him, and then left it with him. As you can tell now, it took almost a year, for him to work on the draft. It came out 18th of June, 2015. So, and then it dawned on us that after all, we're working with a Jesuit Pope. And the Jesuits don't lack resource people to check. They have experts almost in every area. So we recognized then that our draft was going to go through a lot of hands. And so finally we do have the Encyclical, which is out now, and which was presented 18th of June. Talking about this and its history on account of, again, the audience we have this morning. Before the Encyclical, we did have a lot of communication, a lot of input from all around the world. Some offering their help with the development of the draft. Some also warning us about areas we should not, get involved in because we don't have the competence and all of that to get involved in. And others, suspecting what we're going to be dealing with, trying also to stay off certain topics. And some of those did come from the United States. Through the nuncio in Washington, we got a whole huge dossier from the Peabody coal mining group. Okay, so we got something from the Elf Total oil drilling group. So individuals and companies, everybody kept writing to us about what should go into the encyclical. In any case, one thing was clear. All encyclicals are pastoral documents. So if even the Pope, in the development of that, mentions something technical or scientific, the main focus is a pastoral document. This is a pastor writing and communicating with the world, but still as a pastor. If even he says it's for the whole world and not just the Catholic Church, the focus of it is still pastoral, and that needs to be kept, in focus and in touch. So after this encyclical was published, for example, on 29th of June in the United Nations, then people rather kept talking about the Pope's encyclical on climate change. And then again, we had another task of correcting this impression that the encyclical is now Pope's encyclical on climate change. If you want, it's a social encyclical. It's a Pope's encyclical rather on what the topic says, on integral and human ecology. So, natural and human ecology. So it's not an encyclical on climate change, if even in the course of it the Pope talks about climate change. But the encyclical is not an encyclical on climate change. And he himself has had had at least twice the opportunity to correct that. That what he wrote was an encyclical, a social encyclical, not an encyclical on climate change. Okay, so although it comes in also to prepare people for, COP21, which is coming up in Paris and all of that. So all of this, recognize I'm supposed to be here for only 20 minutes, right? And I see the dynamics. One comes here and then another one gets up, and that means your time is up. Yes, you need to try to conclude. So, but where is all of this coming from? And as I say, reading to having new ideas, sometimes, so talking about this is a mixture of both things that I've said before and new things that, I kind of discover in this encyclical. I think the roots of the encyclical needs to be placed in the life and the ministry of Pope Francis in the first place. From his own ministry in Argentina, from his own ministry in Buenos Aires, from his relationship with the people in the favelas, and a group for whom he's invited us to organize 2 meetings already called the Popular Movements. And the popular movements are the cartoneros, the campesinos, and, landless people or poor people, whatever. So he said, let's do 2 meetings for them. The first one, he said he wanted to take place in the Vatican because he wanted to plant a flag in the Vatican. And so the first popular movement was held in the Vatican. These are people who fight for 3 things: access to land, access to work, and access to housing. Okay, so these are the 3 things that they push and fight for. So this is the group that, Pope Francis used to work with a lot in Buenos Aires before he came to Rome. And coming to Rome, at his own inaugural mass, the first, celebration when he was named a Pope, happened to have been the Feast of St. Joseph. And in his homily, he invited us all to be, just as Joseph was a protector of Jesus, he invited us all to be protectors. A vocation to being protector, but protector not this time of Jesus, but protector of the environment and protector of the world. So with this again, the Pope got us into this gear of learning to take care of the poor and learning to take care of the earth. And why protectors of the poor and the earth? Because shortly after his installation and in his teaching on the Wednesday audiences and in his homilies in Santa Marta and outside, he identified 2 fragile elements or objects in our society. 2 fragilities we call them. It is the earth and it is the poor. So sectors of our community or society which are fragile because of their being poor, and the earth itself, the environment. So there are these 2 things then that, merit his consideration as being fragile. And then from there, as it were, it's not too difficult to see how everything is gradually then, coming together, in what then he would, develop as the economy on human and natural ecology. So from here, Pope Francis is then prepared to explore the relationship then between the care for creation, integral human development, and concern for the poor. Integral human development. This again was prepared for by his predecessors. As you know and remember, Pope Paul VI was the one who redefined peace in terms of development. Pope Paul VI had said the new name of development is peace, or the new name of peace is development. And when he so redefined peace, he went on then to, explore what it means. And peace development, therefore, is not simply technological or natural development. He had to be the whole human person. But it would take his successor, John Paul II, to explore the full depth of this. So John Paul II, in his Sollicitudo Rei Socialis and Centesimus Annus, took up this thing of development and explored its depth and so calling it human development, an integral human development. Concern for the poor, concern for the aged, concern for the unborn, concern for the jobless. All of this come together now in this, in the human development. After John Paul II, so John Paul II referred then to this integral development and then observed that the way creation is exploited and made use of is becoming frightening. So then there is the need for what he referred to as ecological conversion. The need to change our attitude and way of dealing with the earth and dealing with creation, exploiting its various minerals and whatever it has. So this explored sense of human development was taken up by Benedict XVI, especially in Caritas in Veritate. Benedict made it still wider. So Benedict did not only talk about natural ecology, and so human ecology. Benedict added two more ecologies. Ecology of society, ecology of peace. Okay, all of bringing them all together as the full realization of the scope or the interest in human ecology is that society itself will be respected for what it is, and that, there will be ultimately peace. So this is the heritage. This is what Francis inherited from his predecessors. So when from his own ministry with the sensitivity about the two fragilities, he wanted to capture this, he had already these ideas prepared for him. And so when he decided then to do an encyclical on integral ecology, human and both natural, he had the stock already prepared for him. On account of this, I think I probably have to discipline myself a little bit this time. On account of this, some have developed a way of reading the encyclical, saying that it's an encyclical of C's. C of continuity, expressing this relationship between his predecessors and he himself on the teaching on integral ecology. C of collegiality, which means how in this encyclical the Holy Father refers to the teachings of Episcopal conferences around the world, which must have struck you. He quotes from the U.S. Bishops' Conference what they've said. He quotes from the South African Bishops' Conference what they've said. He quotes from the Conference of Bishops in the Philippines. So it's as if it's not a teaching only by Pope Francis, but it's a teaching of Pope Francis with all the bishops around the world on this crucial subject matter. So some want to also see in this the exercise of collegiality in this encyclical. And then if you want to go on with the C's, then they talk about the C of care, because in this encyclical, earlier on we were used to hearing about custody, stewardship of creation. Pope Francis uses stewardship only twice in this encyclical. The rest of the time he talks about care for creation. And if you want to be exegetical also with this, you can begin to understand for yourself the difference between stewardship and care. Stewardship itself be neutral, and it can be dispassionate. But there's nobody who cares about something who can be at the same time dispassionate about it. When you care for something, your whole life is with it. Your whole heart is in it, and you give to it everything that you have. So that becomes the expression that Pope Francis uses more and more in this encyclical. And finally, then there will be that thing about conversion. So ecological conversion, which leads to ecological citizenship. And the very many, principles that the Pope talks about. And the final thing would be celebration. The encyclical is also encyclical that calls for celebration of God's gift, God's wonder, the wonderment about everything that God has created, and it can even take the form of a prayer, as we did this morning. So, this again, some have proceeded looking at the encyclical this way, but I'm not going to go that path this morning. But we have many left now. So I just want to briefly explore the thing about integral ecology with you, and then again briefly look at its relationship with scientific research and how the Pope refers to that, and then briefly, hopefully, if there's still time, refer briefly to that thing about being in Ohio. A big industry here is agriculture, and what again we can say about this. So as already observed, then, when at his inaugural mass, at the assumption of his patron ministry, Pope Francis, preaching on the feast of St. Joseph, talked about all of us needing to embrace this mission, this vocation of being protectors of the earth. He offers St. Joseph as a model of protecting Christ in our lives, and based on that, so that we can protect others and so that we can protect creation. So from him on that feast day, we all receive this vocation to be protectors of others and protectors of creation. Then he went on to explain the vocation of being a protector and said that this has a prior dimension, which is simply being human. Being human for him is a way of protecting one another. And again, this is where I need to be, disciplined a little bit. Because for Pope Francis, again, if you have followed his message of peace that comes out in January, since he's been in office, a constant theme has been brotherhood, fraternity. So the big thing that he starts off with is the brotherhood of the human family. So if for him to be protector of one another in creation is simply being human, that's again, his point of departure. The brotherhood of the human family and humanity, which allows us to be involved with all and to, strive for the common good, on behalf of all. So we're called to protect and care for both creation and the human person, and these concepts are reciprocal. Together, they make for authentic and sustainable human development. This is what, the last meeting in September, 25 September in New York was about. The adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is what is going to be leading to COP21. But for the Holy Father, authentic, sustainable development can be achieved only with these two concerns: protection of creation and care for the poor, care for the segments of humanity. So clearly this is not some narrow agenda for the greening of the church or the greening of the world. The Pope's ecological agenda is not simply about greening things. That would be a very limited sense of the Pope's agenda on the encyclical. It is a vision rather of care and protection that embraces the human person, the human environment in all its possible dimensions. And this vision also establishes the continuity of him and his predecessors, as I have mentioned. So Pope Paul VI, as John Paul II began, Pope Benedict XVI continued this and explored this further. So it is an integral ecology that Pope Francis took up from his predecessors in an eminently pastoral way in his inaugural homily, and then continued in this encyclical, Laudato Si, which is now the theme of our discussion this morning. So in Laudato Si then, the sense of integral development then comes up. This again is worth noting because since again the publication of this encyclical, we've been receiving a lot of mails from the Gaia movement, the Earth movement as it were, saying as if with the suggestion that the Pope with the publication of this encyclical has endorsed their agenda. So do we receive mails also from just the green type of thing as, that's what the Pope, but the Pope's encyclical or integral ecology is far wider than simply greening the earth or, considering the earth. One thing I must mention, because you invariably come across it or it will come to you, is the fact that at the UN address, the Holy Father strangely used and referred to the environment as having rights. We were a little bit surprised at that reference. The earth, the environment and the earth as, having dignity and to be respected and all of that, that is something that was very current and new. But to talk about the environment having right of the environment, that was a little bit tough. And then as usual, we bracing ourselves for the defense of that reference. Seeing that we have to justify, because a lot of people, we receive, the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican in Rome called our office and say, is the Pope introducing a new right? Okay, so that is the type of thing that we're dealing with now with this with the environment to this right. Secondly, the thing that the Encyclical would have us do is that the care for creation, therefore, is a virtue in its own right. Compelled by the scientific evidence for climate change, we are called to care for man and to respect the grammar of nature as virtues in their own right. Recall that Pope Benedict has said that the book of nature is one and inseparable. That respect for natural environment and ecology entails or goes together with respect for human beings, and that they are inseparable. And he's talked about that as the book of nature being one. And so in an airplane interview, while returning from Korea last August, Pope Francis said that one of the challenges he faced in coming out with this encyclical is how to address the scientific debate about climate change and its origins. It is the outcome of an encyclical, of a cyclical, is it the outcome of a cyclical process of nature, of human activities? So is it anthropogenic, or perhaps both? And what is not contested is that our planet is getting warmer. That everybody talks about. But the attribution or the discovery of the causes is still up to scientific discussion. And although the UN panel on the climate change come out that the consensus or the opinion of 800 scientists is for climate change, yet there are people who dispute it and people who deny it. And that's why it's also crucial that though the Holy Father refers to it, but it is not to be an arbiter in this scientific debate. Rather, for him, what he does is that he refers to scientific evidence as indicating and proving an experience which is there. And so we know bishops from the Pacific Islands come to our office and say the highest point of some islands is only 4 meters. Where they used to plant crops is now underwater. In 2013, I participated at a conference in Reykjavik on the Arctic Circle, and somebody from the National Geographic showed us how everything, the ice and the glacier and the Arctic Circle is all, the size. So certainly, the global warming is there, the rising of the sea level is there, and people who live along the coast in islands and all can testify to that. But in appealing to scientific research to affirm or to say that the Pope does not intend to become, somebody who gives the last word or definitive word in the scientific discussion on this issue.
Cardinal, we have a couple questions to ask you really quickly before we move on to our next part, because we want to keep this as a dialogue. And I was going to follow up with this part because these are some questions that have come from the audience members. But as you're segueing from the science in the framework, which was beautiful, one of the questions that some people would have in this room would be Laudato Si calls for a serious dialing back from fossil fuels. Here in Ohio, we have a lot of fossil fuels that we use here, especially coal as part of our economy, as well as energy and intense manufacturing. So how do we really balance the economic needs and trends maybe as we shift away from fossil fuels? That was a very challenging part of the encyclical.
We had anticipated that. So on the 22nd of May, before the encyclical was published, almost a month before the publication of the encyclical, we organized a seminar in Rome at the University of the Santa Croce, Opus Dei Seminary in Rome. And the title of the encyclical we took over from, the New Climate Economy Report. So the title of the encyclical was, Climate Economy, okay, the encyclical and Climate Economy. And the focus or the objective was to help the world of business not consider itself or whatever threatened by the publication of this encyclical, and to enable them to see the opportunities, okay, which come with the call for a change of energy paradigm, as it were, dependence on fuel and all of that. And so to address this, we had the boss of Unilever to speak about this from the business point of view. Then we had, the director of the HSBC Bank to speak about this from the point of view of finance and whatever. Then we had a former president of Mexico, Calderon, to come speak on it from the political side, and from the United States, Cardinal World, to come speak about this. That was our attempt to prepare the world of business for this. But we know we've not taken care of all the questions and doubts. Last Tuesday, I had to do a one-day trip to Poznan in Poland, because this region in Poland lives by coal. Everything there is based on coal mining. And they had a big difficulty with the encyclical. In fact, with the whole pontificate of Francis, if he was calling on them to shut down their coal industry. So we had to go, and then again, the Pope is not, the same Pope, who cannot be calling for employment for people and at the same time call for unemployment. He traveled to Sardinia to say that when a father cannot put bread on the table of his family, he's lost dignity. He has no sense of dignity anymore. So, and once to me, he said, can we not encourage bishops to develop, employment opportunities for people in their dioceses? So the Pope is for employment, therefore it's not for anything that would, the thing rather is that, can we do a gradual shift from what everybody knows causes, pollution to something which is more acceptable, cleaner form of energy. So that is a challenge. And I think that we have technology increasing to enable us to do that. Incidentally, let me add, because I said this also to the guys in Poland, mining carbon is not only for fuel. Carbon is increasingly gaining prominence in the development of material technology, the technology that makes new material. Okay, they also begin now to to research deeply into the use of carbon. So carbon can probably find its future, if it's not for fuel, because of its polluting, whatever. It can have a decent future in the technology of new materials and such. So that's should not lead to a conflict then.
I have one more question. This is Ohio. It's very political. We have someone running for president in this state. We have an election next week. And there are a wide range of political views. You might even hear them today. And so Laudato Si calls for honest dialogue among all people, among people with different political views, liberal or conservative. So is there something that we can do as Catholics particularly to foster more productive dialogue to find common ground in this issue?
If you want, that's what we're supposed to do as Catholics. That's what we're supposed to do as Catholics. There's one encyclical that the Laudato Si cites, and it's encyclical. It's a statement by Pope Paul VI. Pope Paul VI wrote this letter in Quadragesimo Adveniens, and then says that in certain situations it is important for the local bishops, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, to discern, together with other religious leaders and even non-religious in his diocese, the new directions and the new things to to do in a given situation. So the call for dialogue, different people coming together to discern the way forward, it's already there. Paul that says right after the Second Vatican Council, suggested that we do that. He suggested basically because probably the Second Vatican Council, Gaudium et Spes, suggests that the church is to provide accompaniment, is to accompany humanity in its various marches through history and all that it does. So yes, the dialogue is what the encyclical offers. If you want then, the integral ecology that Pope Francis talks about in Gaudium, in the Laudato Si, and its call for ecological conversion provides one method, and it is the method of dialogue. Let us all come together and see how we develop and formulate solutions for this common problem that we have. So if he calls for care for our common home, then this care for our common home must be determined by a dialogue about our common home. So it's, the dialogue then is indispensable. And standing here in Ohio, I can tell you already that from Cardinal Dolan, I have a letter now sitting on my desk talking about 12 crucial businessmen in the New York State who wants to come and dialogue with the Pope because the Pope has thrown the invitation. So it's going to be something that will happen, and we expect will happen several times, after the publication of this. So dialogue is the way to go.
Cardinal, thank you for jump-starting our dialogue this morning, and he'll be back for some more questions later on this afternoon. So thank you very much, Cardinal Turkson.